Welcome to the United Christian Marriage Podcast, where we help you build a healthy, united marriage that impacts everyone around you now and for generations to come. Today, we are talking about how God is a God of order and what this means for your marriage.
Hey wives, I see you. I know the pressure you're carrying, the pressure to be the perfect wife, the devoted mother, the woman who keeps it all together. You're told to be soft, feminine, and gentle, yet also strong, capable, and a provider. The world pulls you in 100 directions, stretching you thin, leaving you exhausted, and wondering if you're enough. But I need you to hear this. God has more for you. More for your marriage, more for your motherhood, more for the legacy you are building. You are not meant to do this on your own strength, so press in, do the work, and trust that something greater is coming.
Okay, so sometimes we can get out of order because we have big dreams, big visions, or we get wrapped up in our emotions. Sometimes we just get so busy and distracted, right? That's the enemy's biggest tool, that we genuinely just don't take a second to look around our lives and ask ourselves, are we operating in the correct order? And I think it's so important because God says over and over again in scripture to remember. And we know that he is a God of order. And so I really wanted to bring you this little bonus episode just to encourage you to go back to the design that God laid out for you in scripture, right? Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, that they shall become one flesh. That is the order. That is the original first step here. And then reading Genesis is great. Like, I honestly encourage you to really dive into Genesis, and I will probably do more and more like scriptural applications diving into it with you, because I have just heard so many amazing sermons on this breakdown of Genesis and how it applies to marriage. But today I'm just going to kind of give you the brief overview, and then I'm going to have you guys do more research on your own. And of course, I'm always going to be back with more bonus episodes and more regular episodes just diving into this stuff. But I want to touch on this verse in Genesis 2 again about a man leaving his father and mother and becoming united with his wife. This is essentially the verse of the podcast. Like, the two shall become one. That is what we talk about, is how the two can become one beyond just the the oneness happens when you get married and when you consummate the marriage, right? That is the original oneness. God brings you together, and he says in scripture, what I have connected, let no man separate. So we know that God takes this very seriously, and that it says God himself is the one who unites you. But what we talk about in this podcast, right, is how to go deeper into that and really become one in everything that you do. And so I thought that was good to just touch on that as like, this is our foundational verse, but let's build off of that, okay? And then I also wanted to touch on Proverbs 18:22. He who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord. Sorry, I don't know why I can't talk. So wives, you are a blessing to your home. And we see in other scriptures, right, that we want to be the crown upon our husband's head. We do not want to be the thorns, from nagging him or from bringing him down, being passive aggressive, undermining his authority, being disrespectful, all of those things. We also know that God is a God who hates divorce. Let marriage be held in honor among all, and let the marriage bed be undefiled, for God will judge the sexually immoral and adulterous. Right? These are the foundations within the scriptures of the building blocks of marriage. And then we know in 1 Peter 4:8 it says, above all, love each other deeply because love covers a multitude of sins. And it's not even talking about marriage there, but just loving in general. But of course, these things can be applied to marriage. I think when you look at scripture and you read all the scriptures about marriage, sometimes it can feel like, oh, there's not that much there, right? Like that's how I felt when I first studied scripture, and I just went into my Bible app and typed in marriage, wife, husband. Like I just typed in those terms, saw what came up, and I just started studying those. And I was like, well, it doesn't feel like there's a lot here. But as I study scripture more, and I realized there's so many scriptures outside of just those terms that do apply to marriage. So that's why it's so important for us to be grounded in scripture. So we have this not only as a backing for spiritual protection, but also as a building block of knowledge for how we should operate within our marriage. And obviously, there's Proverbs 31, which is a very popular section of scripture for women and how the wife or the woman should act in the home. So I encourage you to really dive into scripture. That's just some of the many, many scriptures that you could read into and see what the Lord is saying to you. But I really want to talk about this concept of order and knowing that God is a God of order and he does things in order, and he also does them a lot slower than we as humans usually want him to do them, which is funny because I feel like I would almost think it's the opposite, right? Like I feel like God would act so much faster than me because he's all powerful, but God is so intentional and he knows that we as humans, like we just naturally want to put the cart before the horse. And I am especially guilty at this. Like I want to just dive into the thing, just do it, just go to the next thing that looks shiny and fun and like, oh, that'll be a good next step for me. And then I don't take the time to actually like intentionally just work on what I'm working on. And so as I've been chewing on that, and I've been very intentional about noticing that in myself lately and trying not to do that. But as I was thinking about that, I realized this applies to marriage too. We can sometimes like jump the gun and try to do things we're not ready for. And that could look like a lot of different things, obviously. But what's coming to mind is like if you are in a place in your marriage where you're really like not good. You guys are fighting a lot, you're fighting all the time, but you're trying to just, plan your marriage retreat vacation and you think that that's going to solve all your problems. I mean, most likely it's not. Like most likely it may be helpful, but then you're going to come home and everything might just crash and burn. And everything you talked about or you worked on there may just be pushed aside or forgotten about because from my perspective, a marriage retreat is something that you do after you have a few building blocks in place. If you have no building blocks in place, if you're not even dating regularly, if you don't have marriage check-ins built into your regular routine, if you don't have these routines established in your home, if you guys are not talking about your day, your work, your life, if you're not on the same page in your parenting. And so if you have all this stuff that's just chaos, and then you go on a marriage retreat and you think that, all you need is 3 days to talk through it all, and then you're going to come home and it's going to be peachy, well, most likely that's not how it's going to work. Now, I'm not saying that wouldn't work in all cases. Maybe it's a really good marriage retreat where there's like marriage coaching involved and you come home with a whole action plan, maybe then you would have something to implement. But then there's also the question of would you even stick to it? And so something that I've noticed about God is that he takes us through baby steps. Like he's like, okay, little change after little change after little change. And then we get to, the big result over time through those little changes. And we don't even usually notice it's happening till we look back. And so that can be really hard when we're starting in our marriage and we're early on, because we don't have anything to look back on in our marriage to say like, oh yeah, I remember like when God walked us through that little, little by little, and then we ended up here. And when you have that, it's easier to look forward with hope and with joy and expectation. But it can be hard, like when you don't have that because you're so new in the marriage. So if you're new in your marriage, you're in that first like 3 years, maybe first 5 years, I would just encourage you to know that that is a eternal truth, that like God walks us through things little by little to create big changes over time, because he knows what we can handle. And if we just trust him, it'll be so much better than if we try to take it into our own hands. And if we just constantly bring ourselves back to scripture and we constantly journal and pray and reflect on what God is asking us to do next, just the one next step, not the next 25, just the next one, then we will be that much closer to getting where we need to go. Whereas if we just give up and we don't do anything because we overwhelmed ourselves with too much on our plate, then we're not going to get anywhere. So I don't want you guys to keep going in these circles, looping back right where you started. I want you to take that next step and just get one step closer, right? So 1% every day. That is the huge, most important thing that I can tell you. Okay, and so just to wrap up here, I just want to say that God really believes in stepping stones. He has proven this to be true in my life. Like, I am always a person who I just want to know the timeline. And yet God doesn't like drop down and give me a timeline and say, here you go, this is when you're going to meet this milestone, then this is going to happen, then this is going to happen. No, I wish he did. He has never done that yet. I would love it if he did, but he does not. He expects me to trust him. And that has been hard in some seasons of my life and easy in others. But the one thing that I've been found true in all seasons is that he never lets me down. So I hope that's encouraging for you guys. And I hope that you can just lean in and trust him with your marriage. And I hope you guys have a great day, a blessed day, this is the perfect day to work on your marriage. So pick one thing, that one next step, and I bless you, and I hope to see you in the next episode. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you got so much value out of it. And if you loved this episode, could you do me a quick favor and click 5 stars and leave me a review? It would do wonders for spreading the podcast out to other people who need it, and it only takes a few seconds. If you have an additional few seconds, why don't you go ahead and screenshot the episode and share it to your stories so we can spread the message and get more families healed. Thank you, and until next time, I will be praying for you, and I hope you have a blessed day. Bye.